Men and women of Reddit who caught their significant others cheating. How did you do that? And what was your reaction? A few years back I was dating this girl and ended up becoming really good friends with her brother. He appreciated me helping their family when their father died suddenly. 2 years into the relationship, asks to meet up for coffee and a serious talk. Apparently he caught his own sister with another guy, a mutual friend of ours. It had been going on for like a year. Broke up with her. Still friends with the brother. The end. I caught my wife after she passed away from cancer. Worst feeling ever. Caught between unending love, mourning and absolute anger. Wow man, that is f-king tragic. Please tell me you're seeking help with working through that ocean of emotions. I caught my ex-husband cheating as an accident. We had gone to work in the evening and I couldn't get into my office due to a building screw up. So he let me in his so I could print something. He went for a walk to get his steps in. As I was on his computer I realized it was logged into Facebook. I just had a feeling. I looked in the messages and he had been chatting with a woman he met in another country via our work. I copied all I could and confronted him when he returned. Made him take me for a drink and told him there would be no reconciliation. He was shell shocked and I told him to go home and pack a bag. That was 6 months ago and I'm really happy to have lost the dead weight. He was a difficult man. Emotionally abusive. But I lived my vows and tried to help him as much as I could and reorganized my life around him. I found out he had signed up for a bunch of apps, such as Ashley Madison, Tinder, and Bumble. He would message his mutual acquaintances asking if they'd be up for massages, etc. I blamed myself for years that he wasn't interested in sex with me because I'd had a baby and gained a little weight. Nope. He just enjoyed contacting other women for sex more. We're in the middle of our divorce now. He doesn't understand why I'm wrecking our marriage because of a few indiscretions. I was at work and tried to call my boyfriend, but he wasn't answering even after a few hours. And I just got a horrible feeling. It stressed me out so badly for some reason that I started to cry and my boss let me go home. The whole way home I just kept feeling serious dread. Walked in the house and into my bedroom. And he was laying in bed half clothed with some naked chick. Obviously a huge blow up went down. And after everything settled, this motherfucker tried to tell me that he went to the movies alone and met her there and she followed him home. Like, even if I believe that this person just followed you home and got naked, you let her do it. So what's the purpose of saying that to me? It was a shitty abusive relationship. And it didn't even end then. I eventually broke up with him but not on the spot like I should have. If I could change anything about my life, it would be that I wish I broke up with that guy sooner. That was over 10 years ago though. Edit. Your responses are f-king hilarious. I have never laughed so much about this situation. He took a phone call from her in front of me and because, I guess, he thought he was being slick, he started flirting with her in front of me. He ended up sexually harassing me after the relationship was over and I got him in hot water for that. He never did it again and was told if he even talked to me again, he'd get fired. I ended up leaving that job a few months later. I knew he had been unfaithful in the past but I didn't really love him so it was not that bad. However, I was bartending one night and this drunk chick walks up and tells me that I looked familiar. She then proceeds to yell, "Oh, my friend is f-king your husband." So I walked into the beer keg cooler with a bottle of vodka. I downed some shots and went back to work. I held it in that I knew for a few months while I hired an attorney and figured out my next move. I had 3 kids to think of too. So I moved with my kids back home to Texas and got divorced. Now, I'm engaged to my childhood best friend and we plan to marry in Yosemite next year. He's the complete opposite of my ex. Kind, supportive, and loving. So FCK that Sasquatch looking cheater. I caught my ex sexting a chick and telling her how he missed her on my birthday. I was young at the time and reacting with crying and yelling. If it ever happened now I would just get up and leave. No point in trying to mend the relationship because it's near impossible to gain the trust that was lost. Edit. Spelling error. I had come home from a 5-month cruise. My GF at the time was a court stenographer. So when she wasn't at the pier I figured she had a case or was catching up on transcripts. So I got a ride from my friend to see unfamiliar BMW in my driveway. I walk in to see her blowing some stranger on my couch. Keep in mind this was my house, not hers. I didn't say a word to her. I just started grabbing her shitty and throwing it in the front yard and called her father to come pick her up because her car was an old Quattro and in the shop. Again. And up to that point I was letting her drive mine until it was fixed. I will not bore you with the drama, but she was taken by the MAs instead of her dad. I had my suspicions, but it was her who ended up telling me. I went into the relationship thinking, wow, I don't deserve this girl. Way out of my league. She couldn't help but remind me how much better he was several times and made sure to rub it in my face. My reaction was a spiral into deep depression. For someone that has very low self-esteem, being cheated on is one of the worst feelings. It feels like it confirms all your worst thoughts about yourself. Dated a girl for about 2 years. Like 18 months into the relationship we're talking about moving in together. Then kinda out of nowhere she starts becoming distant and irritable. We ended up breaking up. Fast forward 3 months after the breakup, I found that Facebook has a section where messages from non-friends are kept. Turns out my then GF was banging her ex and the UPS driver that delivered to her store at the mall. She ended getting with the UPS driver and his 3 kids. Last I checked they're f***ing miserable and it brings me joy every time I think about it. Edit. In my messages was a note from the UPS driver's then wife. My ex not only cheated but broke up a marriage. So, I had the day off work. As I was making my way round the corner, I caught her cheating. She was on my street. Then, I saw her slyly turn onto the next street and cheating. She was doing this so she wouldn't have to pay the rent. I'm never playing Monopoly with her ever again. You can have my upvote. But I want you to know I'm not happy about it. We started dating our sophomore year of college. We both still lived with our parents that summer. Different states. We decided to meet up in June. Back at our college town. I remember him telling me he was having issues down there from shaving. Then we get together and he is actively avoiding having sex with me. He's doing everything but have sex. We finally have sex. He tries to get me to shower right away. I laugh and say no. I want to unpack. He is in the shower. I walk in the bathroom. See him naked on the ground. Laying down. In this yoga pose. I laugh. Thinking he was stretching. Whatever. We have a good weekend. 2 months later we are unpacking from the summer. Back at college. And I see a Planned Parenthood note in his backpack saying he had chlamydia. He got the results back one day before I came to visit the first time. He knowingly gave me chlamydia and kept reinfecting himself every time he had sex with me. Which is why he wanted to shower after sex and why he was in the yoga pose. He was just having a panic attack because he gave me an STD. Not making this up. I felt it from 600 miles away as a sudden disturbance that woke me out of a sound sleep. I found out by calling to ask about what happened then. Still happily married. But it took a lot of time to work through it. Ex-wife actually asked me for her blessing to commit adultery with another married man. She was shocked when I said I don't support it. She went ballistic, has severe mental health issues. Went and did it anyway and ended up in a psych ward. 2 marriages ended and now the 2 cheaters are engaged. Little devastated at first. Blessing in disguise. He was overcompensating when we was having sex. New styles and adventures in the bedroom. One day he slipped up by connecting my laptop to his phone and I saw the text messages. I hired a private investigator to get pictures and consulted a lawyer. When I confronted him with the evidence, he was shell-shocked. We had an at-fault divorce. He lost almost everything. The cars, houses and joint accounts. We don't talk unless my alimony is late. I moved to a different state in case he becomes vengeful and decides to hurt me. Not me, but my cousin caught his fiancée cheating. He was away every few weeks for work while she stayed at home, doing nothing and refused to find a job. One day, he decides to come home early from the work trip to surprise her for their anniversary. He came home and found her f***ing some guy in the shower. They didn't hear him come into the house or the bathroom. The first thing he did, he took out his phone, took a photo of them having sex and sent it to her mother. A class move if you ask me. He then dumped her and moved on. Many years ago, got in a minor argument with GF. She insisted on going to stay at her father's, but I wanted her to stay so we could work through it. She left and I couldn't sleep, so very early in the morning I decided to go there and just take all blame and apologize. Walked into the spare room to wake her up and she's laying there with some dude. I went back upstairs and sat at the table for a few minutes and saw a hammer sitting on the table at arm's reach. I picked it up and went back to the bedroom and stood there for a few seconds in shock and slammed the hammer as hard as I could against the headboard. You can imagine their wake up reaction. I looked at her and said, "We're done." Looked at him and said, "That could have been you." And I went home to bed. Edit. GF and I were together for about 4 years when this happened. I caught him sexting my best friend. It was horrible. I lost a bunch of friends. Became kind of a loner. I dumped his ass 6 years later. My girlfriend went to visit her parents and friend, and when she came back I just knew. I sat her down and apologized and told her I cheated while she was away. She immediately nuked me with, "Well, guess what? I did too." When I told her that I actually hadn't slept with anyone and she'd just been faked out, she was displeased. Double quote. It was a few weeks ago. I noticed he moved up many levels in the game in such a short amount of time. That's when I knew he was cheating and was looking up YouTube videos on how to complete certain complex quests he was stumped on. I was appalled, yet very understanding. I was engaged at the time. In my early 20s, I'm 33 meters and married to a different woman now. I didn't really catch her. She turned herself in on it. I was super numb over it. Avoided her and blew lots of money on stuff and activities to try and get over it. Never did. And ended up leaving her a month before our wedding. It sucked. And I was not in any way equipped to handle that situation. The woman I suspected posted a pic of the romantic dinner they were having. They were sitting on his deck and deck furniture that I scrubbed clean the weekend before. She tagged him and that's how I knew for sure. When the dust settled and they were together and we spoke about our finances, I got to call him a poo $$wife for having his elderly GF do his dirty work. She is 20 years older than I am and 10 older than him. Saying that was quite satisfying. He was sorting through his pictures and a naked lady caught my eye. So later that day I went on his phone, I would never usually do this, and found many naked girls on his phone. Screenshots of snaps. I also found pictures of me I didn't know he took. I called my best friend and cried. She told me to confront him, so I did. His response was it's normal for men to keep their porn on their phones, and was smug about his response until I mentioned they were screenshots. We were away for a camping holiday. Fiancé went for a walk. She lent me her phone as mine was dead. Was watching YouTube on my fiancé's phone. A WhatsApp comes through from her ex. She had 2 kids with him previously who live with us, with kissing emoji and text saying "miss you." Assumed it was for his daughter. Opened the message only to discover a host of messages between him and my fiancé. Things that were said were clearly cheating. Confronted her about it. She denied it all. Showed the messages. As we were on holiday. We carried on the holiday for the kids' sake. That was 3 years ago. We are still together and I often have to see him when he picks his kids up. Sometimes wonder if I should have walked. Chose to stay for the kids. And now things are better than ever. But it's always in the back of my mind. This happened a few years ago. I was hanging out with my boyfriend at the time and he had gotten a text while he was playing a video game and asked me to check it. When I opened up his messages, I saw a few messages from other girls he was messaging. My only regret was wasting a year of my youth with him. Funnily enough, the girl he was cheating on me with actually told me. She messaged me at 3 in the morning asking if I was still with my ex, and I said yes, he's asleep next to me. Why? She told me what happened. Sent me screenshots and I grabbed his phone. I believed her, but Yano just wanted to see it all for myself. I left the room and looked through it all. He didn't even try to hide it. I went back and threw something at him to wake him up and confronted him. Of course he played dumb. Said he didn't know who I was talking about, blah blah blah. Then I said, oh okay, well maybe this will jog your memory, and pulled his phone out of my pocket. The look on his face was priceless. He knew it was over. I screamed at him. Called him every name under the sun, and then he left the house. This was a year ago, and then a few months after that I'm being told that he misses me. F-king pathetic. My GF, from Mexico, found out I went to a strip club via my computer iMessages. She broke up with me. I thought it was a bit much as I was just out hanging the boys and home for the holidays. Oh well, maybe if you told her about it rather than trying to keep it from her? Or even having a conversation before to ask if she would be comfortable with you doing that would have helped. I DK about other women, but it's almost never about the action. It's to do with breaking my trust. He brought a girl to my work. While I was working. He was a person who had a hard time being physical with others. But his hand was on her lower back and he was rubbing it, kept pulling her close in a type of side hug. He'd been ghosting me for about 2 weeks at that time. And he knew my work schedule. 2 weeks of no contact. But the second I texted him to go off about what he'd just done, he learned how to use his phone again. I honestly think he was too much of a coward to break up with me. Which was incredibly insulting since we were both coming from long-term relationships where our exes had cheated on us. Worst one I know of is an acquaintance of mine. Came home from work one day and found his missus having sex with his dad. That blew up all over Facebook. And became a local drama fest where people tried to organize a shunning of the dad and missus. I remember it well because, well, I know people cheat. But with your partner's father? Come on. She confessed to her mom. Then mother-in-law called her other daughter and told her. Sister-in-law then called me and told me. She let me listen in on a 3-way call to her mom and tried to convince mom to tell me, but she refused, which basically confirmed it. This is still pretty fresh as it only happened a few weeks ago. I went through her phone and there were compromising messages. I confronted her about it and she came clean. Lots of crying. Lots of apologies. My reaction was one of extreme sadness and anger. I cried more than I ever have in my life, and I'm not one to usually cry. It was such an insane betrayal. I had and still have every reason to walk away, but I've decided to stay and work things out. She has been on her best behavior the last week or so, but we'll see if it lasts. I truly hope I'm not making a horrible mistake. I wouldn't wish this on anyone, and really the old saying ignorance is bliss rang loudly in my head the whole time. Not me. But is my aunt. It was a just normal day. My aunt was helping his husband to top up his phone. While his husband was on shower. Her on curiosity go to his phone messages and search in his contact wife. She read through all of the messages, which proves that her husband was cheating on her. Just like that. She saved all the messages and straight filed for divorce. Just happened like a few weeks ago. My English is not good, so PLS bear with me. My ex-husband and his family smoked a lot of pot. Still do. His sister, kids, and nanny were visiting from out of state for a few weeks. When it was time to fly home, they left their stash at my ex-Mill's house because they didn't want to take it on the plane. My ex asked if I would pick it up because I was nearby. Stupidly, I agree. I don't smoke and I was willing to carry it in my car for him. To my surprise, I found a note from the nanny to my ex saying she was in love with him and she was so happy for the time they had together. Obviously she thought he would get the weed instead of me. While it was incredibly painful at the time, I am definitely living my best life 15 years later. I went on a few dates with a guy and at one point he stopped replying quite suddenly, so I decided to call him. A woman answered. When I asked her if he was available, she started crying and said he was dead. She started apologizing to me for breaking the bad news and asking how I knew him. I'm a terrible liar and I was a bit taken off guard, so I think she was catching, but I did not stay on the phone long enough for a chat.